Fellow Toastmaster, tonight I'm going to tell a few things about me. Where I started my life, things I've done, and a little bit about my views about life as well. Now, I started my life in a small place in just south of Center in Italy, about 200 kilometers southeast of Rome. I was born in the country, in a very small place, as I said. And I was the second last child of 5 of us. There was three of the children were born pre-war, and 2 of us were born after the war. That's how it was in those days. It was pre-war children, post-war children, pre-1940, post-1945, and nothing much in between. Now, out there in the country, my mother and father tilled the land. And it was very hard work. We lived in a very small house. And it was pretty smelly from the animals. We lived on top, the animals lived up below. We had some sheep, we had some goats, we had a donkey, we had some rabbits, some chooks, and some pigeons, and there are also creepy crawlies, I can assure you. My school days finished very early. I did elementary school, and that was it. There was no more school after that where I lived. If we wanted to go to school after that, we'd have had to walk about 2 hours. There was no buses, no nothing. We were out in the sticks. As soon as we could do some work out there, we had to do some work. There was no such thing as your kids. By 10, you were certainly thought that you were quite grown up. You had to do a lot of work. My mother died when I was age 11. And after that, I stayed there with my father for another 3 years. After I left the country town, I went to Rome, age 14. At age 14, most of the young men from that area went to Rome, just about everybody. The girls stayed behind, the boys went. It was a done thing. I was in Rome for a number of years. I started off working in a coffee shop and living with my brother and my sister-in-law. And I worked, as I said, in a coffee shop, and I also did a number of other unskilled jobs. In the meantime, I started to learn the English language. I went to school and kept on going. Age 18, I moved out of my brothers and sister-in-law. Wow, that was good. I tell you, that was good. I was free. I could look after myself. It was a really good day. 1 year later or so, I went to a catering college, and I did that for 1 year. After that, worked for a little bit more in Italy, and then I went to England. I went to England, I meant to stay a couple of years. I would learn the English language, then maybe go back. It did not happen that way. I stayed there for the next 9 years. And that's when I met my wife. An Aussie woman, Australian girl, who brought me to Australia. I must say, when I first arrived in Australia, I did not like this place. I left all my friends back in England, and it was a long, long way away from the old country, the old continent. To call Europe, it wasn't like this these days. You got the internet, you got Facebook, you can really stay in touch. I can stay in touch there with relatives in Canada, relatives in Italy. Then to make a call to Europe was about $3 a minute. And we did not earn anywhere near the amount of money one can earn today. So I felt very lonely, very so far away. But slowly I settled down. I worked most of the time in restaurants. And in 1983, I started my own restaurant. I must say, it was very successful. And I enjoyed running the restaurant. Unfortunately, my marriage did not do as well. And in 1988, I sold the restaurant and I got divorced. 1 year later, I decided to buy myself, 2 years later, I decided to buy myself another restaurant. But by then, I realized that my days in the restaurant business were finished. Probably I had to go back to find out. I started to think that maybe, started having this idea that I should do something about my education. So the restaurant went, and I started going to TAFE. I spent a couple of years around TAFE, doing grammar and spelling, and I ended up doing my HSC. And 1 year later, I went to Macquarie University, where I enrolled for doing politics and history, and I finished up with an honor degree in politics and history. I traveled quite a bit. I lived in England, I lived in Germany for a while, and I visited countries such as Denmark, Sweden, Canada, the US a number of times, and here in Australia, of course. I've not gone to as many places as I would like to go. So here we have, and in the meantime, while I was studying, I was developing my investment business, because one needs to make a living. And I think I've been relatively successful in building an investment business in both property and shares, which is looking after me very well, and I think it probably can look after some people even after I'm gone. So what do we have? Here we have a young man who left a small place in Italy at age 14 and went to Rome, virtually illiterate. Worked for a while in Rome, moved to England, mastered the English language, came to Australia, ran a restaurant or two, and then decided to go and do some studies, got himself a degree at age 48. And I think I could have done, maybe I could have done better, but I think I could have done a lot worse too. I'm quite happy with what I've done. I'm happy with my lot.